Michael, thanks for taking us out right here. We're at the Mesa at Sedona Airport right now.
Airport Mesa, we call it Area 1 Sedona.
So tell me about this place. When was this airport brought forth? How old is it? Because it's a particular landing spot, kind of similar to the Nazca lines.
This airport is unique here in Sedona in that it's a top of a butte that's just been leveled a little more and paved, and it actually slopes just a little bit. But this runway is amazing. It's in the middle of Bell Rock, Cathedral Rock, Courthouse Rock, all these amazing, Thunder Mountain, all these amazing red rocks, and one of them is chopped off, and it's a runway. And it's it's one of the places I learned to fly into.
You know, when you're looking around here, you have a view of all the mountainous regions of Sedona. Have you ever seen any strange lights? You run the Sedona UFO tour guide right here.
Right, absolutely. Started, I think the first summer that I was in Sedona was 2013, after I'd moved here, and we were here on the 4th of July. So we went down a little bit towards Cottonwood to get a clear spot of the Cottonwood fireworks. And as we were standing there in the parking lot, and I have witnesses to this, including my wife, as we were watching the fireworks go on, this like orange light was hovering and floating over in this distance, just over the tree, and then it would go like below the tree. Of course, my peripherals, I noticed it disappearing as much as appearing. And then every once in a while it turned white, and then it was orange again. And it had to have been there 30, 45 minutes. And I've seen that booger 3 times now in the last 10 years.
Well, Michael, I know we just met and we spoke on the phone just yesterday so we could meet up at the spot, but you have a background in government. You actually worked in above top secret projects. Can we discuss this a little bit?
We can discuss it a little bit. We may not be discussing everything, but certainly anything. First and foremost, I'm a constitutionalist, and my oath to the Constitution supersedes everything except my promise to God. Okay.
Well, let's talk about some of this action. Let's go for a walk.
Sure,
Come
okay.
on. Let's, because this is what people want to know.
I got an opportunity to retire in 1990 from doing missile and satellite systems, and I got involved with a group whose main reason for living was to uncover government cover-ups. So then that culminated with the HARM missile project for the F-14 that I got to work on in make brand new test devices that improve the yield and calibration, shorten the calibration time, and really help them crank out a lot more missiles.
So with your access with above top secret clearance, are you still under the clearance of above top secret?
No, I do not have a current clearance that I know of. But then on the other hand, I will never violate my oath either.
Well, before we get into the oath, can you say that you've seen anything that's been a cover-up in regards to the phenomenon in general?
What I've seen is $25 trillion of space program that people don't talk about. And I've watched it grow. I have this ridiculous photographic memory. And when I started doing these tours in 2018 in Sedona, we had between 12 and 15 ships a night that we would see in the hour to hour and 15 minutes. We're now seeing in excess of 50 ships a night in that hour to hour and 15 minutes. And then on top of that, satellites, and on top of that, airplanes. I know the difference. I worked on them.
Yeah. Well, we're standing on a structure here. So can you give us a little bit of historic provenance to what we're standing on?
This was actually the stage for the Masonic temple in Sedona during the 1970s and 1980s. Now, I have been inside the building, I've been in all the rooms and floors and everything, and there's no bad juju. However, I did go through and smudge everything before we started doing our conferences here. I performed on this stage a number of times. What a great backdrop.
I know, it is amazing. And right now we have special access. Michael's opened up the gates. This place is all to ourselves, and it's right next to the Sedona airport. Now, let's get into the next topic, because I know things are building up. You know, the government's talking about UFOs more and more. There's a new office. Let's discuss your thoughts on that as we look around here.
Well, it's changing, certainly. Information is coming out.
Is it even a good idea for disclosure?
Well, all the disclosure that's happening right now are the things that are already our technology. So they're not disclosing ET technology. Although it was ET technology, now it's our technology. And the things that we haven't figured out, they aren't showing you. And that will not be coming out until there's a complete revamping of telemedia and education in the country.
So there is this kind of two-sided story in the UFO field. Some people believe like the Tic Tac and this Nimitz encounter was something ET unknown. The government wants us to believe it is. And then there's another side of it that's where people think that this is ours, that we've actually developed this kind of technology and they're keeping it hidden from us for over 70 years now.
Not only have we developed it, those were our gravitic drones from the 1980s. I was working on some of the technology that's used in the gravitic drones.
So tell me about this gravitics, because I know there's electrogravitics as far as verbiage, but can you get into a little bit more of the technology?
Well, there's
the
vortex gravitics, synchrogravitics, electrogravitics. That's why I just use the term gravitics, because most people can grab a hold of that as an understanding of somehow it manipulates what we perceive as gravity. There was no Big Bang, there are no electrons. It's a much bigger story, okay? But gravitics are done through the manipulation of the electronic everything, that which is, the big picture. It's not a void up there. Big electromagnetic fields, and you can manipulate those, and you can twist those, and you can violate the linear physics that you've been taught by doing some wonderful high voltage. Take water and push it at 300 meters per second, you get this blue plasma off of it. You take mercury, okay, you really get a plasma that lifts, that neutralizes. It's called inertial modification. You're really modifying how the gravity appears around that object.
So, as you're stating this, and again, you've had the top secret, above top secret clearance, is the government actually holding gravitics from us, the meta?
Yes.
They are.
Yeah,
and
there's a breakaway civilization that's just scratching the surface of. Medical technology, educational technology. You know, in The Matrix, which is a documentary, by the way, The Matrix, where they stick the plug in the back, they've got the hoods that can teach you, I know Kung Fu, the same way as The Matrix does through the spike in the back.
So as far as a whole new world, things could change overnight, right? Isn't this possible?
And they should.
So the gravitics, Bob Lazar speaks of it, and he says it's unstable. Like the sports model had a wobble to it. It just can't
when
stay.
it's inside a planetary,
So can you get into more of that, of this in the planetary technology? What's the difference between being on Earth and in space?
Well, in space you have several, it's kind of like being a pilot, where you've got multiple instrumentation points that are broadcasting. Out in space you have multiple things that are gravity wells. So you can calculate and aim for a well or between a well, but when you're right on top of a huge, the Earth is 6 sextillion, 588 quintillion tons, okay? It's like huge amount of mass, and so it really pulls down into the gravity well. So unless you have a really super stable version of interstellar flight, and not everybody did, although just about everybody does now, you get more wobble. You know the ones you see in Mexico, over Mexico, that has like some serious wobble? You go, there's got to be a string up there. No, it isn't. It's working the balance. You can find the same thing by spinning a top. And if you don't spin it fast enough, then it starts getting this wobble, okay? So it's the same kind of thing.
There's technology, probably most likely private corporations are advanced in this gravitics technology, more so than a private government faction.
They're mergers.
They're mergers?
Yeah.
So how much would it actually cost? It sounds like you've got the theoretic brains behind it. Would you be able to build your own device, your own propulsion?
Well, I could, because Kesha already came out with 2 different ways that you could build your own spacecraft. So I wouldn't even have to have the equipment to hit the mercury at 300 meters per second to throw out blue plasma and little bits of gold, by the way. I wouldn't even need that, because Kesha has made a much more affordable method. But I'm more earthbound. I mean, I've developed my own magnetic motor. I've got an HHO for this unit here. If I ever decide I need to run it on water, I can do that. By the way, the license plate is Element 115. I don't know if you noticed that.
Oh, wow.
Of this truck, because that was the name of my band that had the alien drummer, was Element 115.
Is it required to have Element 115 to?
No, it isn't. That's just one. Well, 115 to 116 has these huge delta, huge difference in its ability to interact with what is the ether. I know they say there's no ether, but it's not really quantum, it's really ether, and we could go into that maybe in another episode.
I know there's a lot to discuss, but let's get into something more personal. You've had your own abduction experience, and apparently you've been given a gift via their communications with you that any kind of question I ask, you have an answer.
Yeah.
So
except for personal human history and language. Those are the two things that I haven't been able to bridge the information on.
Well, let's start off with the biggest question of them all.
Okay.
Let's go for a walk here.
All right.
This is my first question. Why have the aliens, if they've come all this way from another star system, come to Earth?
We have invited them. We have 7 space stations that are hosting 100 different species from our local star cluster, and we're doing commerce with them.
Commerce?
We trade custom nanotech for materials not found on Earth and information that we haven't uncovered yet again in this rise of man. Because, we've been here many times before, further than we are now. So we've gotten to this point in development 4 other times that I know of from the history that was downloaded to me by ET. 4 other times we've come further along technologically than we are right now. And cataclysms and war. The Sahara Desert was a Sahara forest. Not too awful long ago, 40,000 years ago, was the Sahara forest. And there was a nuclear war over that whole area, and it took out the Sahara forest.
What about these mountainous regions right here in Sedona? Some people claim they're petrified trees and not rocks.
I gotta say, I was skeptical when I first heard those kinds of theories, until I saw the drone footage fly over Devil's Tower in Wyoming. And then I went, duh, it's a tree. Arizona, I believe, has several as well. I can't say which ones. I'm still doing some math on that, figuring out, well, if the diameter is this, then the height would, and when you get up to about 20 to 25,000 feet, you gotta wonder, because, unless the atmosphere was a lot different, which of course it could have been, trees obviously couldn't grow that high. Our aspen line is about 10.5, right?
So there are theories within the field as well in regards to the UFO extraterrestrial beings, the life forms, the biological.
Right.
Are there a threat in nature to humankind, or are they malevolent?
Well, here's the second most important piece of information that was downloaded to me in my face-to-face contact in 2001. There's no such thing as a benevolent species. There's no such thing as a malevolent species. That's one ism. No such thing as benevolent species, no such thing as malevolent species. There's good and bad in all things, just like people, just like dogs, just like horses, just like iguanas, just like ET.
In your abduction experience, did you feel that it was hostile in nature?
Okay, first of all, I don't call it an abduction. I call it an invitation that I wasn't allowed to decline.
Yeah, I've done that.
I was floated out of my bed against my will, floated out of my bed, down the hall, rotated 90 degrees at the end of the hall, knowing that there was something in my kitchen. And they let me walk into the kitchen and see the 3 8-foot ETs, very white, slightly blue, no hair. They had bumps on their heads, not like collinear bumps like a reptile either. They were like random bumps on their heads. If you scaled me to 8 feet, their eyes were 25% bigger than mine, powder blue in the center, nose half the size of mine, mouth half the size of mine, never moved. Their cranial area was slightly larger going into the jaw. The jaw to the neck was the same ratio as ours, not like the pencil necks you see on TV. Shoulders about 2.5 to the head. They had longer arms. They didn't really have musculature. I'm a doctor on TV, and so I can recognize the difference in musculature. They were very wiry. Couldn't tell where the clothing ended and the skin began because it was the same color. And their fingers were twice as long as mine, 4 fingers and a thumb, and their fingers were twice as long as mine.
So one of the biggest theories in regards to disclosure is that the public, they couldn't handle the truth of not being alone in the universe, and the anxiety would go up so high as far as if these beings were a threat to mankind. Do you think the human race can handle it? And is the government wondering or worried about the whole aspect of that?
Well, it's not just governments that worry about it. Extraterrestrials are concerned about it. And that's what the Phoenix Light events was in 1997.
March 13th, 1997. Nearly 19 years ago.
While thousands of people were outside purposely looking at the sky for a glimpse of the Hale-Bopp comet, they also caught a glimpse of 1 mile to 2 mile wide, in some very credible reports, either orbs, giant balls of light that seemed to be attached to something in a mile-wide V formation, or actual craft.
Most people don't know this. South Mountain is where the ship, the Boomerang, disappeared, right? And they dropped the flares and filmed that and tried to cover it up. South Mountain's real name is Sierra Estrella.
What is that?
Mountain of the Stars. I climbed South Mountain in 1965 with my parents, who were very much into archaeology and anthropology. And on the way up, there were petroglyphs all over. And some of those petroglyphs had spaceships and guys with glass bowls on their heads. Now, I ask you, why 1,600 years ago would the Anasazi or the Sinawa, whoever happened to be there at the time, carve these kinds of drawings in the rocks? I'll tell you why. South Mountain is a portal. And what they didn't tell you on television is there was not one ship, there was 42 craft that flew into South Mountain that night from every angle.
They were called the Phoenix Lights and quickly became one of the largest mass UFO sightings of all time.
There were many of
One of the first people to witness and record the lights from her home in Paradise Valley.
For 19 years, we've tried to defend these incredible videos.
Balls of light, triangles, square cubes, saucers, boomerangs.
Was this supposed to be Disclosure Day?
They were meeting to determine whether or not the general humanity was ready to join high school.
Streaming on YouTube is this video analysis of the so-called boomerang lights seen that night over Southwest Phoenix.
People had what they called camcorders back then.
Because we already have the Breakaway civilization. They're already through high school. Okay, when I say high school, I'm talking about the real stuff, right? The real tech, the med bed, the 0-point energy, the electrogravitics, all this kind of stuff. So the determination was made that the human race was not ready, the planetary-wide human race was not ready to join. And if you need any evidence as to why, look what happened over the last 2 years.
Absolutely. And even the governor of Arizona wanted to, make it a big joke. He made this huge announcement.
Fife Symington was told under no uncertain terms, you're going to cover this down. And so he did.
That's what he did.
Until about 5 years later, I believe, he finally came out and said, yes, there really was something, and I don't know what it was, but it wasn't flares from the military.
Well, it's crazy too, because you're saying that these were individual craft, not one craft that was appearing to be a mile long.
Well, there was one craft that was over a mile long. There was one craft that was 3 miles long. And there was a lot of little ones. It was a consortium to determine, as a collective, whether it's time for the humans in general on this earth to join high school.
Speaking of high school, you came out with this book, Wake Up and Do Something, right?
Wake up and do something, because waking up isn't enough.
So, you've hand-signed this, you've given us your little thanks for doing what you guys are doing. You're passionate about revealing the truth. I appreciate that. Thanks, Michael, and I appreciate you joining us. And you're ArizonaUFOtours.com. Tell us a little bit about what you do. I know you got some sophisticated equipment that you're using for the UFO hunting.
Yes, we're using the latest Generation 3
comet.
Yes, right there. Somebody's laser just pointed at it.
I got it. I got it on my phone.
So here's the latest comet. This is the kind of sky we have right here in Sedona. Everybody say hi.
Hi.
Sedona UFO Tour Guide.
Flashing lights recorded right here in the valley sky. Could the sighting turn more of you into UFO believers? Well, tonight, ABC 15's Christopher Side shares where this footage came from and the questions being asked on a national level.
There's about 4 minutes of this, a V-shaped object in the sky above North Phoenix near Cave Creek.
So tell us about your rig here.
So this is the ATN PVS-7, third generation, current military ground troop issue, not for U.S. export night vision goggle.
What have you seen through these?
Oh, we've, from the very first Starlink over California, over the Pacific Ocean, now we're in Sedona, Arizona, we saw them fly over the Pacific Ocean. Then we have seen 2 flying and a third turn and join. We've seen the groups of the TR-3Bs flying together. One time there was 3 flying together and one front had its rotating beacon going. And these are all at probably 500 to 800 miles up. So it's not like, you know, low Earth orbit things going on here. We see the shuttle ships that are going back and forth to the space stations. We see a bunch of those every night. They're a teardrop shaped ship, about 4 times the size of Space Bourbon over there. And it's got 2 pilots up front, 3 to 5 people in the back, and a lot of really creative snap-in storage compartments. And they're taking freight and passengers back and forth to the 7 space stations that are the wheel type, not the International Space Station. It's a Tinker Toy pickup truck. No, these space stations are the real deal. They're made out of Gemini second stage rocket parts. They're huge.
So these are secret space stations,
right,
unbeknownst to the public, but
correct,
we're paying for it through black budget programs?
We don't pay for anything because the money is made up out of thin air. When you have a $25 to $30 trillion space program, that money did not come from the people's taxes. Okay?
So they're just basically unlimited funds, unlimited control over humanity in general.
Right. And they do a lot of importing of drugs and black market stuff, and these intelligence programs, they've been taking advantage of human weakness for a long time. And they take that money and then they invent more out of thin air.
Michael, you've got so much information. We're gonna have to get you back on Third Phase of Moon. You know, thanks for having us over here at this airport, Sedona. It's an amazing town right here. Man, Michael, appreciate it. We're gonna get you back on Third Phase of Moon and talk to you some more.
Thanks so much, Mike.
Michael, appreciate it. Keep your eyes on the skies, all right?